vehicle for transportation purposes versus basically a billboard. So we tried to add some clarification to that a little bit. The biggest section of our ordinance that we have, and it has the most of our regulations in it, that the committee spent the most time on, would be the sign regulations by land use and zoning districts. We looked at how the current ordinance separates out the different groupings of signs, and we felt like that was reasonable. We hadn't really had any complaints or issues with that. So we retained those same categories that we have currently. And those include signs that would be allowed anywhere in the town, signs that are more or less for residential properties, those that are for freestanding or single-use type non-residential projects, and multiple use, multiple tenant non-residential developments. And then there's some uses that have kind of specific signage needs based on just the nature of the use, like drive-throughs, gas stations, hospitals, things like that. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but we didn't really make a lot of changes to those. So the first section of this large section is signs permitted in all zoning districts. We tried to take out all the content-based provisions and basically focus on the physical aspects of the signage. And what you mostly have in this section is government and public safety related signs, or signs that are of a temporary nature. So these are some examples of signs that would be allowed anywhere: flags, traffic control signs, real estate signs, the temporary parcel signs, different things like that. And now that we'll start looking at the different land uses themselves. So we had signs that would be allowed anywhere. Now these are going to be focused on residential uses. Most of the physical requirements that we have in place right now are still the same, would be the same. We just added some clarifications. We added some clear language about the lighting and landscaping expectations so that, you know, there wasn't any ambiguity with regards to what is expected. And then we just obviously reworded or replaced content-based language with a content-neutral language. For example, a real estate sign is now a temporary parcel sign. So we don't really, basically you've got so much physical square footage that you can have for a temporary parcel sign. You can use it for real estate, or you can use it for any other message you want. These are some examples of signs that you typically see in residential context: the subdivision entrance signs, the construction signs, real estate signs, and all those have been kind of reworded to be content neutral in the ordinance. So like a construction sign and a real estate sign is you know, temporary parcel signs now. We don't really say it has to have a construction or real estate message on it necessarily. So that's residential. The next category is the freestanding buildings, the single-use non-residential. Most of the physical requirements have been unchanged. We still cap ground-mounted signs at 40 square feet for these kind of developments. We have allowed them to go taller in the draft ordinance and on the ordinance before you in a couple of weeks or so. And that is basically to allow them to build a sign base that is more visible and that ties the sign in with the building better. We'll look at some examples of what I'm talking about here in a minute. And then just trying to get signage more compatible, even for single-use type developments. So this is a good example of a sign that has a very visible base to it. And that's one thing that we have in the ordinance. We are actually requiring new signs to have a 2-foot visible base. It's made out of material that is compatible with the primary material in the building, so that the two are kind of tied together architecturally. Because what we've been getting, and this is really a factor of the current regulation in terms of the height allowance that we have, are signs that they're not unattractive, but mostly what you see is just the sign face. You don't really see much of the base, and we wanted to try to change that, not only to make the sign look like it's tied in with the building, but also to get the sign face higher, so that if they put plant material around the sign to make the sign area look better, that it's less likely to grow and cover the message on the sign. So the next category, well, let's see, we're still under single use. Some other things we did in the single use category was clarify certain wall mounted signage provisions, especially like corner lots, and trying to be consistent with how we treat corner lots. We've provided a couple of new signs in the sign ordinance that should be of benefit to businesses. One of them is called an interior accessory sign. That's a sign that really is not to be visible from public streets. It has to be at least 60 feet from all property lines. But once you're back in the property, somebody can take that allowable sign and they can have certain information on it that might benefit them, like directional, how you find a delivery location, or a certain type of tenants that might be in different parts of the site. And we don't really currently have that kind of sign that's allowed. We tried to simplify the window signage in the draft ordinance. And the next new sign that we had is called a building frontage sign. And that's really to allow a business the opportunity to put a solid sign out in front of their building, as long as they don't block the pedestrian access, so that they can, use it to call attention to something that they want to make the patrons aware of. We don't currently allow for that either. We still don't allow for those type signs to be wind activated, so it would have to meet the language in the ordinance. So that's some of the other changes that we made. This is like a corner lot. Right now, there's a difference in how corner lots are treated for freestanding buildings versus multiple tenant buildings, and we wanted to just basically make those consistent. There's really not been any changes to large buildings like Kroger, Marketplace, or Ingles. That's more or less the same language. These are the parking lot directional signs. They're now called peripheral accessory freestanding signs. This is an example of window signage in front of JCPenney, and then one of those storefront signs that we're now providing for, that they can put out and take back into the establishment at the end of the day, but they can use it during the day to advertise something that may be going on that they want to call your attention to. These are interstate interchange pole signs. We have changed the language in the ordinance for those, although all the existing pole signs would comply and be allowed to stay. We were not creating any non-conforming situations. We just tried to make it a little bit more clear and content neutral on those type of signs. Scoreboard signs, we don't really have much of that in town. Flags, we spent a fair amount of time on flags, and we provide for those. I think we have plenty of opportunity for people to use flags however and it doesn't have to be a government flag. That's one of the content-based provisions that we have right now that wouldn't probably pass the Reed test if it were challenged. So that's another area we changed. The multiple use buildings, that's going to be your shopping centers for the most part. Most of the physical requirements are unchanged. Similar to other sections, we clarified our expectations for landscaping and lighting. We have the sign base requirement of 2 feet for multiple tenant signs. Another thing that we've done is a benefit for an entity that may have a lot of street frontage is in lieu of a 60 square foot sign that they would be permitted along, let's say you have at least 400 feet of public street frontage, you could substitute that one sign for 240 square foot signs along the same frontage. They just have to be 150 feet apart. The benefit of that is that if you have a lot of tenants in a building, it gives you 20 more square feet to advertise the tenants on your ground mounted sign. So that's another new provision that I think is a benefit to businesses. So really the overall height to accommodate the requirement for the 2 foot base is now 20 inches taller than what we currently have, if you're counting the address. And that's not a huge difference. And that's really the only physical difference in the signs. The square footage is still capped at 60 square feet for multiple use and 40 square feet for single. But that height has been increased to try to have a more visible sign base that looks better than what we currently provide for. Multiple tenant signs, that's always been a challenge, trying to provide for representation of tenants where you can read it and it's actually effective for the tenants. That's something that the Visual Resources Review Board looks at when they review signs. The more tenants you have, the harder it is to make sure they're all legible and compatible. We don't, this particular shopping center here has many additional tenants beyond what's on their sign, but that's what they've worked out with their lease agreement to have just 4. And this is kind of a good example of the kind of sign that we're encouraging, to where you have more of that base material that's exposed and it ties it to the building. Some other things in the multiple tenant, similar to freestanding buildings, we've clarified and modified wall mounted signage. We've provided for the interior accessory sign that I mentioned earlier, where if you're in the development, you've got an extra sign that's now allowed that can direct you to different parts of the development for wayfinding purposes or whatever. Let's see, what else? We've got a couple of additional signs that would be allowed in mixed-use town center and mixed-use neighborhood to really acknowledge the fact that those are more pedestrian-based environments. So you'll have some more store frontage type signs, projecting signs that you wouldn't see in other parts of the town. Wall signage on buildings like this was also modified. Basically, you have here a building that has multiple tenants, but they all share the same common access. So the way the ordinance currently works is you get a 1-to-1. You basically take the width of the building on which the sign is to be mounted. Let's say it's 75 feet. You could have 75 square feet of sign area, but it all has to fit within a single 75 square foot imaginary space. So that means all the signs pretty much have to be there together, which may not necessarily be a bad thing. But what we've got in the ordinance now is basically take that same 75 square feet and you can divide it up on the building however you want, as long as the signs themselves are individually compatible with each other and you don't exceed that 75 overall square feet. Pedestrian mall, this is the only one we have, really not changing anything in the ordinance with that. Compatibility of wall mounted signs in multiple tenant buildings. We tried to make the language more clear. in this ordinance as to what our expectations were. We try to allow people to have their own individuality, but if you look at the building as a whole, there's not any one sign that stands out as being out of place. That's really the goal of the compatibility. So you can kind of look, a lot of the buildings on Parkside Drive and newer buildings, the wall-mounted signs they're all individual, but they have a kind of a general consistency. A challenge has been kind of the older shopping centers where it's kind of a mixture of different sign types. So what we've got in the ordinance now is to try to work with that property owner and the Visual Resources Review Board to come up with a desired wall sign that when tenants transition in and out, basically they follow that desired wall sign, so that over time you have consistency within these older centers. This is one of those interior signs that I was talking about that's 60 feet away from all property lines. They're using this for directional purposes. This is one of the storefront signs that I talked about earlier. That is a new sign that this sign is currently not allowed, but we see it all the time. And it, as long as it's not wind activated and it's not creating a safety issue or blocking the sidewalk, then we didn't see any harm in having a sign like this. So we're providing for it in the ordinance. But we do have certain criteria that they need to satisfy in order to have that. Because this is the kind of sign really in your mixed use town center or mixed use neighborhood that you would want to encourage. It gives you, kind of a more active storefront area, more energized space instead of just a sea of concrete.
Mark?
Yeah.
For clarity, you might want to point out that you're talking about the ground sign, not the building sign.
Oh, yeah, I'm talking about, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm talking about the sandwich board sign. That's right. Yeah. That would be the building frontage sign that we're now providing for in the ordinance. It's not currently allowed. These are some other signs that you might see in a mixed-use town center environment, projecting signs, and we're providing for those. Basically, as a pedestrian is walking along the sidewalk, they can see what businesses are coming up. And then finally, the last section are those uses that have kind of sign-specific needs that are a little bit different than most other uses. Banks, drive-throughs, gas stations are the most common. And of course, we have the hospital that has a lot of wayfinding needs associated with it. And really, we looked at the current language, and it doesn't really have a lot of content-based provisions. It just talks about the physical aspects of the signs that would be provided for these kind of entities. So we really didn't see any need in changing that language. And the town attorney has looked at the ordinance and is fine with the language with everything that we're proposing here. Menu boards is a little bit different from town center, which is non-town center. So we do acknowledge that, but more or less the same provisions we have. Gas stations. And then the hospital, of course, obviously it's very important to be able to find where you need to go in a hospital environment. So that's pretty much everything. I will be happy to try to answer any questions if anyone has any. It's a lot of information to go through, I know. So if you all have anything you want to ask me about, I'll try to help you out with that.
So Mark, Scott Meyer here, so one question. So for the community center, I noticed that when there's like an event, there's kind of a temporary sign if there's like maybe a health fair or whatever. So what are options do we have with this ordinance for the community center to have some kind of signage that we could advertise more events that are open to the public? Would it always be those temporary signs that I see like around Christmas time that say, you know, shop Farragut?
Yeah, that's one option is those type of signs. That's something certainly around the holidays that could be used. And those would be your temporary parcel signs that are discussed in the sign ordinance.
I'm just wondering if there'll be an issue at some point, because if the community center is more active and there's more activities that are open to the public, you know, we're missing the opportunity to advertise those activities, I guess, unless we just use these temporary signs, which I don't honestly find that attractive.
Well, I would imagine a lot of the media that they use over there is probably through the social media and different types of avenues like that. I don't think there's as much reliance or need for signage as there used to be, because everybody's so connected with information. So our hope is that there won't be a real need for a lot of signage and frequent signage for these kind of entities, that they can get the message out in other ways. Because again, one of the overall objectives of having a sign ordinance is to minimize visual clutter. So we really don't want to have these signs popping up all the time, for anybody, because again, like you said, it's not that attractive, and it can get a little bit out of control.
Mark, can I add just a little for Scott's background? I'm sorry. The temporary signs that you see, the Shop Farragut signs, were put in place as a negotiation with Farragut Business Alliance.
Yeah.
They were really struggling with how to get the word out that they were there, and so we allow them through a special event permit.
Sure.
That's right.
And I actually, it's helpful, Mark, for you to bring that up on the screen. It's just, I'm just thinking long term, if the community center, again, there's more community activities. I've seen other community centers that do have signage that is more temporary in nature, and it's got lights, coming August 15th, health fair or whatever, and it appears, I've just seen multiple times these temporary signs from the community. Wondering if that's going to be how we're going to advertise the signage. Is that the intent going forward?
And one thing on, when you look at the signs not requiring permits, one of those is signs placed by or on behalf of a governmental entity. So I think we have a little more latitude to try to use those temporary signs, but we, just need to be diligent about that, and try to not have something out there frequently, but that is really provided for in the ordinance. The assumption really is that it's our ordinance, so we're going to comply with our ordinance. But that is something that we could do with the language of the ordinance.
Is have more temporary signs to advertise events.
You could.
Is that you're saying, Mark? Okay.
Yeah.
This is Alderman Finchuk. I think as things get back to normal, if they were to get back to some kind of normal, the more people that use the community center, I think maybe we can have internal signs near the registration desk when people come in to check in, and have maybe a list of upcoming events there. Even that might solve the problem and might suit the needs of what Alderman is suggesting.
And I don't really have an answer. I was just curious. So, okay, thank you.
Yep. Anyone else have any questions or?
I'd like to, this is Alderman Pinchuk again. Mark, I want to thank you for the outstanding job you did coordinating this committee and walking us through it step by step. It was a monstrous job, and you handled it very well. I appreciate all that you've done, and I think you got a good finished product here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, we had a really good committee, and we didn't always agree on everything, and that's good because I think we ended up making some adjustments to try to address all those different perspectives that makes the ordinance hopefully a better product.
I'd like to say thank first, Mark, for all of your efforts, but Alderman Pinchuk and no Betty Dick and Jennifer Roach and John Hoffman served on that. I really appreciated their time.
Yeah, we, like I said, we had a really good group, and they were good to attend the meetings, and we spent a lot of hours going through this. So they did a great job.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate all your work on this again. And Mayor and Board, we will plan on having this to you on first reading on August the 13th. I think it's ready to go unless there's any further questions or comments. But Mark's been working hard. We'll try to get first reading to you then. Thanks, Mark.
Okay.
All right. The next agenda item for the workshop we wanted to talk through, and I sent this to you, the Board of Mayor and Alderman, just yesterday, as a copy of our Farragut Museum Committee Charter. And there were some different amendments that I know a couple of the board members wanted to discuss amongst yourselves. So at this point, I will open it up. Mayor Williams, do you want to start off tonight in talking about the charter there?
So I can do that. This is the last of the charters that we'll address. We've looked at most all of them this year. When you do stuff like this, you typically need to fine tune them as you go, as you see things that happen and change in our town, and sometimes based on what we have as far as committee members that can be involved. Sometimes we have a lot of hands-on people, and sometimes we don't. But one of the things that I looked at on this particular one is one I sit on. So we all at least sit on one. Some of us more than one, but this one here was, as I said, the very last one, and I went through and looked at some of the stuff that I listened to a lot of the committee members that as they would talk about what they thought was needed and how they thought changes should be made. So I'll start off with if you look at the charter, I think you may have that there handy. Allison or David on the screen? No? Okay, well, no.
Mayor, give us just a second, and we'll try to see if we can upload it here in just a minute. Okay. Sorry about that.
If we can go on page 1. One of the things that on the list of the committee shall do is to raise funds for the museum through donations and memorials and honorariums and memberships, and to acknowledge these letters and special programs and publications. And it kind of stopped right there. And it's not something that one of the things, I guess, the membership part of it is something I think that most everybody really talks about. And that's something that we need to do as needed. I think that needs to be added to that. I like to think that they need to be a salesman to be on this committee, but anytime they can sign up a friend or family member to be a friend of the museum. I think it's a good thing, and so I think adding as needed to that particular item is something that we needed to do, and that would be the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth one down. I think that would be one thing that needs to. Let's go to page 2 if we can. Scroll up, please. Okay, the next item was, and this here again is listening to the members. They thought that the 2-year terms were good, but they did not think that that 2 terms of 2 years was a long enough time to be on this committee. So what I'd like to change there, it says where members shall be limited to 2 terms, 2-year, which would be 2 2-year terms. I'm thinking that it should be 4 2-year terms. That would give them 8 years of service if they so want to stay on that long. And a lot of the members of this particular committee has been on there quite some time, and they work real well in the committee. So that was one of the things that that I heard. And the other things was, it says that there should hold 10 meetings during each fiscal year. I think that needs to be worded as needed, because a lot of times they may have things that they set up at one meeting, and really there may not be a need for another meeting the next month, or even maybe even the month after. So I think that should be changed to, instead of 10 meetings, but shall hold meetings at each year's fiscal year as needed. And the very last will be the paragraph there. The committee will consist of, it says 11. I think that needs to be 9 voting members, along with a youth member. I think that would be my suggestion as far as changes to the charter.
Mayor Williams, if I know you're asking for 9, is there any reason why we wouldn't back it down to 7?
7 would be okay. I mean, it's that's what we're here discussing.
I just know that the more members you have on a committee, the more complicated it gets.
Well,
So
7 or 9, either one would be good. I mean, I'm saying 9.
yeah.
But 7 would be fine as well.
How does anyone else feel? Scott, any ideas?
I just don't want to, turn away folks who want to participate. And so if we tend to have a lot of folks who want to be on this committee, I don't have any problem with 9 spots if we can fill them all. That's just my 2 cents.
Okay, Alderman Pinchuk, anything on your thoughts?
Yes, Mayor, if you've been on the committee, would it function well with 7 as well as 9, in your opinion?
I think it would. Either one. There is most of the people on there are docents, and they pretty well know the whole program. It's not like you're having to teach somebody to sit on this particular committee. It's one of the few committees that that's even like this, that most of the members that are members are docents as well. So it wouldn't be a stretch to have 7 versus 9.
Well, 7 or 9 doesn't, neither one is an issue with me. I guess what I would think you might want to do is go from 11 to 9, and then if you feel down the road it needs to be cut back to 7, we can always change this charter again as needed. But either one works for me.
Hello, you've reached 986-0609. Please leave your name, number, and a brief message, and I'll get right back with you. Thank you.
Somebody's not muted.
Hey, this is the Board of Mayor and Aldermen from the town of Farragut. We just want to say hey. And thanks for joining our call.
Okay, Alderman Burnett.
Yeah, this is Alderman Burnett. I don't think I have a strong feeling either way. I kind of like the idea of what Vice Mayor Pavlin said, where sometimes where there's fewer heads on the matter, it's easier to come to decisions easier. But all that said, I would be okay with 7 or 9.
Okay. Well, I think if everybody's comfortable with the rest of the recommendations, does anyone have anything that they think should be changed or added?
Mayor Williams, I do want to say, you'd say the committee shall hold meetings as needed. I know they usually have a kickoff meeting. Should we, they're recording some of our stuff, huh? Should we, I don't know if that needs to be in that language, that there's an annual, the first meeting of the year. I know that's what Parks and Recs does. I don't know if you have an opinion on that, if that needs to be in there or not.
Well, that's, again, this particular committee is quite a bit different than some of the others because of the experience of the people that are on it. I mean, one of the things that I guess that we've kind of overlooked this year is, and now would be the time we would normally talk about it, well, either the first meeting in July or the second meeting in July, would be the what we get sent as far as an annual report from each committee. I don't think anybody's sent one in yet, but that's understandable when you've not met for many months. And I think some of the committees have done some virtual. This is kind of a deal where usually when we sit down and look at this time of year, then we also look at the annual report as far as the status of their goals and objectives. And so we're kind of having to probably wait at least until August in order to get some sort of a report. This and others, I mean, this is not the only one that's not sent in a report, but we do need to have those reports, I think.
This is Alderman Finchak. Why don't we simply change the word shall to should?
Okay. That's good.
Sounds good to me too.
Okay, well, if that's all, then I think we can let our next board meeting, we can go ahead and vote on the changes. And we'll all have to look at the committee members as well on that one, I believe. Let me get my.
Mayor, I think this is David. I think the biggest question that I would just have is, would you rather do 7 or 9 for the charter change for next meeting? And certainly you can make that decision again next time, but we'll have to craft something to give you for you to vote on for the next meeting.
Okay. Well, I don't know that we have I guess a majority of what we think as far as the 7 or the 9. I said 9, but again, 7 would be.
I think you're fine with 9. Mayor Williams, okay. I think you're fine with 9.
Okay.
I'm fine with 9.
Okay.
I don't serve on that committee, so I'm fine.
Okay. Then I guess David, have you got what you need now?
Yes, sir. I think so. I think we have everything we need. We can get that to you on August the 13th, and we'll get you a list of the current committee members, and you may have to obviously make some reappointments at that time.
Okay. Okay, we can do that then. August 13th. Okay. Okay, that's all I had. So I guess we're about ready for the beer board, aren't we?
Yes, sir. I think the beer board starts at 6:50, so everybody has a little bit of a break before we get started with that. If you need to take care of anything or go anywhere, do anything. Be back in 8 minutes.